way.
Yeah, there was gunshots going off back on the tracks. Cops just flew back here.
Calling 10-172, 4 South Low, 720, 4 South Low. Shots fired by the police by a known armed offender. 720, 4 South Low, no further submission.
Yeah, I just went down Hurdle, past the police department. Protesters are all around the police station protesting Black Lives Matter. They got the doorways all blocked, everything.
Hey, this is Rob Palazewski here, and you are listening to The History of the Future. I'm here with my producer, Tony Baratta, and this is the second part of a series that we started last time called Pray for the 4th of July. It's also, you could call it Chaos, Collapse, and Working the Plan. And what it is, I think what I'm going to do here is that we're going to start by talking about what we established in the last broadcast. Those protests over George Floyd have been hijacked. That's what we talked about. I mean, there are legitimate concerns out there over racial violence, but they've been overtaken by the violent, leftist-driven, revolutionary action of the leadership of Black Lives Matter and Antifa. And we know this. This is stuff that's out there. The riots came from the protests, and they were engineered, and they were planned. I mean, come on. Bricks, rocks, and incendiary materials were put in place. They used military tactics to increase the chaos and destruction. These were long planned for. This was an anticipated uprising, and it just went operational. And what you can compare this to is the 60s domestic terrorists of Obama's buddy Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground. Back then, they even planned re-education camps and mass executions for people that they couldn't reform in the camps. And you know what? A couple of Bernie Sanders operatives talked about that very same thing. Talked about the camps here. So what we have here is we have democratic socialists who want a remaking of society. We got the regular Democrats and the never Trumpers that just want Trump out of office. We got the woke whites who want to purge their group guilt for sins they never committed. We've got the BLM believers, the true believers, who actually are seeking to right the wrongs of racism. And then you got the Black Lives Matter leadership who want to burn down the system. Their words, not mine, want to burn down the system. And then you've got Antifa, full-fledged communists, full-fledged revolutionaries, and they're out to take over the United States. This is what we are up against today. And we talked about all of that. And then you have the deep state, which is just going, okay, guys, have at it because you're doing our work for us. Within every federal agency, there's a group of these, and some of the federal agencies are run by that. And later on in this series, we're going to talk about what a FEMA insider has revealed about what that agency has planned for all of us Americans here. And it is not pretty. Now, all of this revolutionary activity, and I'm just summarizing what we talked about last time, had a spiritual pedigree, and it began with the mystery religions of Babylon and Egypt and Rome and Greece, and then they were passed on all through the ages to other groups like the Gnostics, like the Knights Templar, like the Rosicrucians, and the Masons and the Illuminati. Even in their own literature, the Masons admit, in fact, they brag about fostering major revolutionary movements, including the French Revolution, where 20,000 Parisians lost their heads and they turned completely against God. Just an amazing thing. So, catching you up to where we have been, now the question is, where are we now? And that is, we're going to talk a little bit about the economy and some other issues too here. So where does that take us? Well, let's start looking at just how the events of 2020 have shaken out over these first 6 months. First of all, the year starts with the coronavirus outbreak. And then comes the reaction, which is the real thing, because it was pre-planned. It is a pre-planned reaction. What they were going to do was all laid out. They knew ahead of time. It was pre-planned back in 2010 by the Rockefeller Foundation when they war gamed this. And then again by the Gates Foundation in conjunction with the World Economic Forum. And that happened just months before the virus hit. Lockdowns were always part of the plan. Lockdowns were always part of the plan. The coming vaccine was always part of the plan. They didn't have to know that they could make a vaccine that would work. They just have to know that they were going to trot out a vaccine and say that it works. The tracking chips that would go along with the vaccine were always part of the plan. They were in the game. The lockout of the economy. If you don't have a vaccine, you're not in the economy. That was always part of the plan. By the way, that sounds suspiciously like the architecture of the mark of the beast, when if you needed the mark to buy or sell. That's what the Bible says is going to happen in the last days. And just amazing. The one world currency. The one world electronic currency was always part of the planned response. And, by the way, I remember back when I was in college, when I was an undergraduate, I wrote a major paper on that way back in the Pleistocene era. Now, the purpose in all of this is to break the economy. I mean, if you think about it, for the lower level Democrats who don't know that they're feeding into a revolution, they just want to beat Trump. And if they break his economy, which was swimming along fine, in fact, very nicely, they feel that they can beat Trump. And we will see. We will see in November how that all shakes out. So now, what you have is that you have the World Economic Forum just announced that they're holding a major conference, major dual conference in January of 2021. To accomplish all these goals. What goals am I talking about? I'm talking about a one world economy. I'm talking about the drive toward one world government with a one world economy, and eventually to be joined by a one world religion. And by the way, if you don't know it, all of that is biblical too. So then, following that, you have the specter of the protests turning into riots. They turn into full-blown disorder. Now you got statues coming down. But not just supporters of the Confederacy who, or slaveholders, but they're trying to tear down Lincoln statues, the founding fathers, Teddy Roosevelt, and it's just amazing. So the civil disorder then is followed by calls to disband police forces. What nonsense! What idiocy! That's only going to exacerbate the violence and the disorder. Now, one of the major leaders of the BLM movement was on Fox News, and he actually said, if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down the system and replace it. We will burn down the system and replace it. His name is Newsom. I'm not remembering his first name right now. Back earlier in June, he announced that the Black Panther, or the BLM, was going to start a Black Panther-style armed patrol to take on the police in New York City. And then another agitator, Sean King from Black Lives Matter, is calling for statues of the, quote, white European Jesus to come down. He called it a form of white supremacy. So now you got this general disorder that is occurring, and it's adding to the pressure on the economy. All of this is, just the lockdowns just had the unemployment numbers just soar. What do we got? Like 45 million people out of work in this country right now. It's just an amazing how many millions were added each week for the longest time. The middle class is devastated. Almost half of Americans are not able to maintain a minimal modern lifestyle. Then you got the small businesses. Well, you know what? They're going away, a lot of them, and they're never going to come back. And those two classes, the small businesses and the middle class, are the foundation of American Republican democracy. That's what you need to have a working democracy. Now you throw one more piece into the mix, the food supply crisis. Milk is spilled. Fruits and vegetables plowed under. Chickens and livestock herds are culled. And now they're predicting food shortages, raising prices. But the UN's got a solution for that, by the way, in case you don't know. Artificial lab-grown meats and insect protein. Sounds good to me, doesn't it? So, where are things going to head? Where are we going with all this? You know, we have all this violence. What's likely to unfold here? Michael Snyder kind of got into these predictions. He writes, in this case, for the Great Recession blog. He has a few blogs, and he writes for some other periodicals, too. And along with my own reinterpretation of this, here's what I'm seeing that we can look forward to in the rest of 2020. The disorder, by the way, it has, this is the first point, has legs, and if it's going to last unless it is snuffed out. And believe me, this is not, it is driven by a demonic revolutionary spirit. And then as more and more testing, point two, as more and more testing happens, we're going to get more COVID cases, and government will again attempt to lock down the country. That's going to lead to the next point, resistance to any lockdown, more social unrest, this time from the other side. And then you're going to have, with the pulling down of the statues and the attacks on American institutions, you're going to have the continued move to erase American history. Just incredible. Another irritant in the body politic is going to be the election season. And that could be the most incendiary one of all. And then further protests are probably going to lead to more infections, which will probably lead to more attempts to close down the economy or slow down the reopening, depending on where we're at. You know, there is no social distancing at these protest rallies, and the numbers are artificially inflated anyway, and now they're padding on the numbers from the flu and the colds, and you're going to see things really spike up, and this is going to be a point of contention among the quarantine everybody wear a mask crowd against those that say, no, everybody's going to get this anyway. Let's just be done with it and protect the vulnerable people and protect those who are under who have got the coronavirus. Now, this effect on the economy, it's going to affect the airlines, the cruise lines, and the hotels. They're going to suffer big losses. Some of them aren't going to survive. Entertainment events are going to be canceled. That's going to, and they are being canceled. That's going to depress local businesses. And all of that taken together is going to depress government revenues, especially local government, state government revenues are going to go way down. So what are state and local governments going to do? They're going to be closing up shop in certain areas. They're going to be cutting back. There's going to be cutbacks on police, and defunded police departments will not be able to protect in the same way. So you got that situation. So the situation is going to get worse, and it's going to require more policing. Only there's not going to be more policing. There's going to be less policing. The lockdowns and the diminished police presence are going to further suppress and weaken the economy, because businesses are going to hightail it out of certain neighborhoods and certain areas that they see as lawless, where the police cannot protect them. We're seeing that already. That is happening in the highly volatile areas. And now, because of these stimulus packages, federal debt's going to rise. And the cost of servicing that debt is going to go up because the federal debt is going to rise. The stock market is going to have to depend on the Fed printing more money. So you just have this circular situation, which is just blowing things up here. And overseas, they're not immune to this either. This is an international problem. You get banks like Deutsche Bank in Germany and others out there who were weakened before the crisis. And, you could see crashes come down. If Deutsche Bank goes down, that's a real big one, or some others go down. You could see U.S. banks that have ties to those foreign entities, they could go down. You're going to have malls that will close, never to reopen. And many of the jobs that have been lost are never going to come back. The weak economy will hit the construction industry and as well commercial real estate. Now, this whole thing is made to order for revolutionaries like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They need to take down America so they can raise up the America that they want to build, America with a K. And so they are using this, and this will be in place. They are using this to tear down America, to win the revolution, to tear it down and then set it up again. America is at a crossroads here. we are facing something very dire. Now, last time I mentioned that there was a threat, a 4th of July threat, that Antifa was going to go to Gettysburg in force and deface and desecrate the graves, burn flags, desecrate the graves of the American soldiers buried there. You know, they are rubbing our nose in this. I heard a report that the National Guard was called out to protect this. Now, along with that threat, and I'm mentioning this again, you know, this is not 100% confirmed, but the threat is out there, is that Antifa's plan was then, at the same time, to go into the suburbs and, under cover of fireworks, start fires on the 4th of July in the suburbs, targeting the suburbs specifically, and then turning around and actually doing home invasions where they would shoot down people in their homes in the suburbs. So that's the situation on the ground. I would ask that you pray very hard for this situation, that we pray for God's mercy, that God would show us what is going to happen, that God would give us the truth, that he would set up a hedge of protection around the people of this nation, and that he would restore sanity. This is Rob Palazewski for the History of the Future, signing off till next time.